All right, in the last video, we practiced converting between slope-intercept form and standard form. In this video, we're going to add in point-slope form, and we're going to go from point-slope to slope-intercept to standard form. So in this first example, we have an equation in point-slope form. Y minus 11 is equal to 3 times the quantity of x minus 2. So first thing we want to do is solve for slope-intercept. And just a reminder that slope-intercept is y equals mx plus b, which means that we're going to be solving for y. So in order to solve for y, the first thing we need to do is distribute. So we have this y minus 11 is equal to 3, times quantity of x minus 2. And so we're going to distribute this 3 across, both here and here. And so we end up with y minus 11 is equal to, we have 3 times x, which is 3x, and 3 times negative 2, which is going to get us negative 6. So now we have y minus 11 is equal to 3x minus 6, and we're trying to solve for y. So this one's not too terrible. We just add 11 to both sides. So we end up with y is equal to 3x plus 5. And that is our slope-intercept form. There's nothing else that we need to do there. So now we want to go to standard form. So just a reminder that standard form is ax plus by equals c. So we want to solve for the constant. So we're going to start in our slope-intercept form that we just solved for. We have y is equal to 3x plus 5. In order to solve for standard, we want to get the constant, which in this case is 5 all by itself. So we subtract 3x from both sides because that's going to get our constant. Now I could write y minus 3x, but because standard is ax plus by, I'm actually going to put the x first to rewrite it. So I'm going to have negative 3x plus y is equal to 5. And this would be okay. However, remember with standard that we cannot have a negative x. So in this case, in order to get rid of this negative x, I'm going to multiply everything by negative 1, which means I'm going to switch the sign to everything. So we end up with 3x minus y is equal to 5. And this here is our standard form. Moving on. So we have another point-slope form, which looks like y plus 2 is equal to negative 3/4 times the quantity of x plus 1. First thing we want to do is solve for slope-intercept, and in order to do that, that means we are solving for y. Why? Because we have to at this point. So we have y plus 2 is equal to negative 3/4 times x plus 1. So just like we did with the other example, first thing we're going to do is we're going to distribute this slope across to these points here. So now we end up with y plus 2 is equal to negative 3/4 times x. That's going to get us negative 3/4 x. And negative 3/4 times 1, that's just going to get us negative 3/4. So now we have y plus 2 is equal to negative 3/4 x minus 3/4. So we're trying to solve for y, which means we need to get rid of this 2 on this side. And what we do on one side, we have to do the other side. So we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. Now we have y is equal to negative 3/4 x minus 3/4 minus 2. So in order to write 2 as a fraction, we would write it as 2 over 1. But I need to be able to subtract it with 4. So that means if I have 2 over 1, let's just do this over here. And then I want to make it have a common denominator of 4. I'm going to multiply it by 4 over 4, which means I'm going to get 8/4. So I'm going to have y is equal to negative 3/4 x minus 3/4 minus 8/4. So now I can subtract these. I have a negative 3 and a negative 8, which is going to get me negative 11. So now I have y is equal to negative 3/4 x minus 11/4. And just because this is not a slope, I want to put it in the most proper and most reduced form, which means that I'm going to turn 11/4 into a proper fraction. 4 goes into 11 twice. There's 3 left. So that's going to be 2 3/4. So I'm going to get y is equal to negative 3/4 x. That would look like a 4 minus 2 3/4. Hopefully you can kind of read that. So now we're going to put this into standard form. So we're going to start with what we ended with in slope-intercept. We have y is equal to negative 3/4 x minus 2 3/4. And we need to solve for the constant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 3/4 x to both sides in order to try to get this constant alone. And so that's going to get rid of that here. And then I'm going to end up with, I'm going to put the x first again, like I did in last example. So we're going to have 3/4 x plus y is equal to negative 2 3/4. Now remember that when it comes to standard, we don't want anything as a fraction. We want it all to be integers. So in order to make this all integers, I'm going to multiply everything by 4 to get rid of these 4's in the denominator. In order to multiply, well, we'll just go through. Okay, so I have this 4 times 3/4, which is going to get me 3x. I have 4 times y, which is going to get me 4y. And then I have 4 times negative 2 3/4. In order to do that, I'm going to turn negative 2 3/4 back into an improper fraction. So I'm going to end up with negative 11/4 times 4. And so that's going to get the 4 out of there. So that means I'm just going to get equals negative 11. And this is our standard form. 3x plus 4y is equal to negative 11. When I was younger, I had a computer. And it was a singing computer. It was Adele. All right, we have this next one here. We're starting with y minus 1/4 is equal to negative 3 times the quantity of x plus 1/4. So again, we're starting in point slope form, and we want to put it into slope intercept form. That means that we are solving for the y. So we're going to start with y minus 1/4. I'm just going to rewrite this is equal to negative 3 times quantity of x plus 1/4. So, just like we did in the past two examples, we're going to distribute this negative 3 across. So we're going to end up with y minus 1/4 again. Y minus 1/4 is equal to negative 3 times x. So we're going to get a negative 3x. And then negative 3 times 1/4. So we're going to get a negative 3/4. Alrighty. And so now we're trying to solve for the y, which means that we need to get rid of this 1/4 on this side to get this y alone. So I'm going to add 1/4 to both sides. Apparently I have an inability to draw fourths. And I'm going to add 1/4 to this side as well. So now we have y is equal to negative 3x. And then we have negative 3/4 plus 1/4. So that's going to get us negative 2/4, which is going to be, as reduced, negative half. So y is equal to negative 3x minus 1/2. And that is going to be our slope-intercept form. Now, if we want to put that into standard form, we're going to solve for the constant. So we have y is equal to negative 3x minus 1/2. So we're solving for the constant, which means we want x and y to be on the same side. So I'm going to add 3x to both sides. Get rid of that here and add it to here as well. Again, I could put y plus 3x, but we want the x to be first, so I'm going to put 3x. I almost made it positive 3x, which I guess it is, but 3x plus y is equal to negative 1/2. Now remember that in standard form, we want everything to be an integer. This 1/2 is not an integer, it's a fraction. So in order to get rid of that 2 down there, I'm going to multiply everything by 2. So we have 2 times 3, which is going to be 6x. And then we have 2 times 1, which is going to be 2y equals, and then this 2 times negative half is going to be negative 1. So our standard form is going to be 6x plus 2y is equal to negative 1. And there you have it.